This week we sat down with two former abortionists who are speaking out about the profession they say left an emotional scar on them and the women they treated.
When I had graduated from medical college and when I was in my residency training program in the late 70s, if you asked me just generically or politically, what I thought about the issue, I would not have hesitated to say, look, I'm pro-choice. This was a decision between a woman or a doctor, and no one else, including the baby's dad, had anything to say about it. It's one thing, a lot of people identify themselves one way or the other, but when you're an obstetrician gynecologist and you say that, then you have to decide whether you're going to actually do abortions or not. So as part of my training, I didn't have to learn to do abortions, but I did. And right along with learning how to do deliveries and hysterectomies and everything else that obstetrician gynecologists do, I learned to do abortions.
Noreen Johnson had moved from Trinidad and Tobago to study medicine in the United States. Learning to do abortions was part of the curriculum.
It was part of the routine training for residents in the program that I attended. So it was really not presented as a choice. When I first started residency, although I do remember that there was one student resident who, when we were told to go down to the abortion room down the hall, actually, interestingly, from the neonatal intensive care, it's quite a paradox how these things can happen on the same floor, almost side by side, but I remember my fellow residents saying, you all can go on down the hall and kill those babies, I'm not going to do that. But at that time, it really didn't have an impact on me. I thought she was just different. And so I went down the hall with my resident to perform first trimester and later second trimester abortions.
How many abortions were you asked to perform during your residency?
Typically, we did abortions 1 day a week, and it would average about 6 to 8 first trimester abortions and probably about 4 to 6 second trimester.
You understand what the baby looks like at any stage of pregnancy. How did you persuade yourself that pulling these children apart in the womb is an ethical thing to do as a doctor?
Of course a doctor knows fetal development. And not only that, if you didn't, you'd be reminded of it every time you do an abortion. When you do an abortion, whether it's a suction abortion where all the contents are pulled into the suction machine in a container, or much more graphically, when you're doing a second trimester abortion, literally pulling a baby to pieces, when it's over, you have to go through the material that you obtained. You go through that suction bottle inside the machine, or you literally look at the parts that you pulled out and you almost literally reassemble the baby. You have to take inventory. You have to make sure you got 2 arms and 2 legs and all the pieces. Because if you leave anything behind, your patient's going to come back infected, bleeding, or worse. On the other hand, when you're pro-choice, you have this mindset that says, well, I'm here to help my patient. But you're not thinking of that baby as a patient at all. You're completely ignoring that aspect of it. Your patient is that young lady. And you're going to help her get through college, or not be a single mom, or complete her, whatever it is, whatever her reasoning is, and whatever is motivating her to come there, you're there to help.
How far into pregnancy would you say was your latest abortion?
Probably about 22 weeks, thereabouts. Those abortions that were past 16 weeks during training were done by prostaglandin infusion into the uterus, or saline infusion. Now, there's a big drawback with those types of abortions because occasionally you could end up with a live birth. And because those babies were delivered by quote-unquote natural means, through the vagina, they were expelled by contractions of the uterus, and sometimes the babies were alive when they were born.
So what'd you do then?
You just left them to die. A lot of times we, would leave the room and, leave it in charge of the nurse who would, we weren't there a lot of times to see what happened.
For people to get an idea how big we're talking about, if you literally look at your hand, the width of your hand from from the tip of your finger down to your wrist, that's a 20-week baby, about that big, not counting the legs. That's head to rump, which is the way we measure them. If you turn your hand on its side, the width of your hand is about 12 weeks. That's about how big they are at 12 weeks. And so when you're talking 24 weeks, now you're talking a hand and a half, even bigger. These kids, as I said, these are fully formed children. There's no blob of cells involved here. These are, as I said, every abortionist knows that.
When we come back, reality sets in.
But for the first time in my life, I didn't see how somehow I was a great doctor helping out my patients, and I didn't see her wonderful right to choose, and I didn't even see the $600 cash I just made in 15 minutes. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter.